Okay, guys, very informal. This is the third year we do this event. I would like everyone to come in if possible. Oh, 1 minute? Okay. Give him 1 more minute. Okay, let me get started. First of all, welcome again. I try to meet as many people as possible here. So welcome here. There are customers, prospects, investors, friends. Even I met 2 people today in Fifth Avenue, and I said, "What are you doing today?" He said, "Nothing." I said, "Have you heard about Placer?" And no, come on over. There's free food. So we have a couple of people here from the middle of nowhere. So everybody's here today. So I want to say one word before we start. We talk a lot. There's a big program here today, and you're going to hear a lot about what's coming. Noam is going to talk about the roadmap. So you're going to hear a lot about the product, where we're going, few surprises and everything. I decided to concentrate on 2 or 3 quick issues for you to begin with, who we are. So trusted and loved by 3,000 plus customers. 3,000 customers. Last week, we closed 87 new customers. 87. Can you imagine that? It's like more than 10 per day. So, we're getting this kind of an SMS email from our customer success. "Stop it. We can't take it anymore. Can you slow down?" No, we're not going to slow down. We're going to double that, and we're going to do a lot more than that. But what I wanted to say something about the culture, trusted and loved. Look at the title. Somebody said to me, if you want to be trusted and loved, you have to love yourself. Let me explain what does it mean for employees. Our 650 employees, they love to work for Placer. They love the company. That's number one. I know that you are the customers, and we want to make sure that you love us and you respect and all that. But first and most important, the employees themselves, with a lot of enthusiasm, they love to work here. Zero politics, zero. People work, whatever they have to say, they say. And we have a lot of the people in the US especially, that work out of home, a lot of trust among the people. And that reflects to the customer service. That reflects to the logos you see here. So 4 years plus in the market, since we launched the product, 4 years. We're reaching very soon the $100 million mark. Then 3,000, we're going to almost double again the number of customers next year. And the way to do that is number one, yes, every 30 days, like a clockwork, there's another release. Every 30 days. But the customer success. We emphasize that every customer have a named CS person that serves him. So we decided to take the customer success unit to the maximum. And we plan to continue to do that because with data, it's not only to give you accurate data, sometimes you have to be guided how to leverage the data. And that's the challenge, and that's what our people do across the board. So I'm talking about customer success, solution engineering, all the entities that that help you sometimes. Sometimes to do it by yourself. You don't need any help from us. But many, many times, people can say, "Hey, we saw somebody trying to solve the same problem. Here's the way he did that." And then you can learn something or whatever. So continue with that strong commitment to customer success, strong commitment to the accuracy of the data, strong commitment to you, and strong commitment to our employees that actually is the engine that make everything happen. Okay? So with that, and I wanted to talk, this is a cultural issue, but that's us. That's who we are, and that's what we plan to continue to be. Now, the areas that we were focusing so far, you know them, but I would like just to emphasize just for a bit, we started with the commercial real estate. History, we started with that. And then we moved strong into the retail and the civic. We have about over 700 accounts from the municipalities and the other related activities, and we're moving very fast. As you can see that with 10 deals a day, you can imagine we're talking about the Wells Fargos and we talk about the city of, so we're talking about big logos and big companies. Is the trust is being built there for what we are. That's the way we would like to position ourselves, and people talk about us the same way that I describe right now. People feel the passion for that, for the employees to serve and give the best of the best. We are, by the way, of course, growing the company, and we're planning significant more growth here. You can imagine, to continue this kind of a growth for us. We are going to, and we're already there. We're in the financial area, restaurants, and all of the other areas here. They are coming, some of them moving faster, some of them will move a little bit slower, but we plan to penetrate every place that there is a need for our data. But again, keep in mind, I will say it the third time today, don't lose the entrepreneurship. Don't lose the commitment and the integrity. That's the most important issue. Not to be afraid to say to any one of these customers, we made a mistake. No, we don't know. As you know, we leverage our data collecting for about 25, 30 million devices, 24/7. It's a walking live survey, and it across the country. But it's not a bulletproof, right? So we always try to get to the 95% accuracy. So you guys, when you use the data, it's not a bulletproof, but it's the best that exists out there. And always I talk about the half glass full, half empty. Yes, you can talk about what's needed. You will never be able to track down every individual in the US. There's no way it's going to happen. But we have enough survey that gives us the ability to extrapolate and bring you the accuracy of the data across all of these versions here. So today, when Noam, first of all, you guys will be here on podium and you talk about your experiences and everything else. When Noam speaks about the roadmap, pay attention. He will tell you more about what's coming here to address the market. I would like to say something about the partnership area, the one that are right now heading very strongly. By the way, look at this. I thought about it. This looks like the solar system, and we're the center. So, and that slide was moving a little bit. It's like everything is moving. But you can see one way we plan to grow significantly is leverage partnership. We cannot get everywhere. We cannot do that. When we signed a major partnership agreement with Bloomberg a year and a half ago, and it was announced last October, okay, our data was put into their terminal, that's the name of the product, is being used by 300,000 users every day. So suddenly our data is being shown to so many individuals doing financial services and stuff like that. Okay, so it's the low end of the market mainly, but the name, the distribution is through them, and we have a huge partnership to continue. So when we do partnership, we plan not only to sell data, we're planning how to grow together. And we have plans. I can talk about any one of these for 1 hour, tell you what's in and what's coming or whatever. It's a fascinating area. But I want to deliver something to you that we're bringing more and more partners. The names that you see around, by the way, some of them are being delivered via our marketplace, okay? And some of them are being put into our product as an additional, like enrichment of our data. And some will have more impact on the crowd, like the Bloomberg, right? Our name is out, and suddenly people see our name everywhere. We get a lot of leads and more trust, and of course, credibility. If Bloomberg says, we chose Placer to be our partner when we deliver what they call alternative data, that's something very significant by itself. It creates a lot of credibility and leads for us to come up with a full package of the product and deliver that. So that's going to be a real life. And I'm very pleased to announce today a new partnership, which is very significant. That's the Esri. I know some of you already spoke. You know, you're using Esri, which is the geospatial analytics, you know, the #1 in the world, hundreds of thousands of customers across the world, not only the US. They have all the government areas, places that we haven't been there before, okay? But we're putting forces together. There's going to be a joint press release soon, you know, maybe a week, 2 weeks, something like that, and we'll talk more about it. But in a nutshell for you, because we are getting together here, I just want to say something like, it's like one leader brings all the geospatial technology into the table. And the other leader, placer, brings all the data, the content. And we marry them together. We marry them together. And that's very, very strong. There are some use cases we talk about that we have never dreamed before, that we can accelerate and present it. Because at the end of the day, data, the way you present data, can make the whole difference here. If I know how you can present the data, I can present the data, you can do it in a better way, somebody can get a decision faster because the way it does that. So the mapping capabilities there is phenomenal. And by the way, the people that actually use, and I spoke to my friend from Albertson here, Nat, that, you know, they're using Esri as a tool before we even, you know, engaged here. So for people that use that, they will be able to seamless, they will, by the way, I didn't say that, but we're planning to develop an add-on to our product that it will allow people to use Placer, and in the background, use all the tools, have the ArcGIS or Esri tools and environment behind seamless. So they will be able to manipulate the data using all the tools behind. And that's going to be announced more officially during the NRF. And we will make maybe a major, you know, presentation of the first product in Esri's user group next July in San Diego. That's the famous one that they run every year. So that's another one coming. And there's more in the pipe. So what I want to say to you again, one more time, the partnership issue is a way to grow and deliver to you more capabilities and faster. There's no way one company can develop all the technology, then can get to all the customers around. So in order to do that, we're going to partner with many companies that you know the names. I cannot disclose right now, but that one is here. So that's, the timing is good, but there will be more to come, more to come. Large companies, by the way, like Esri or Bloomberg and many others, you can imagine they would love to get our data as part of their solution as well. So it goes both ways. The motivation is to come from both ends. It's not like we're selling something. We are selling ourselves as a good partner you can trust. Everything I said before about us, that's what we sell them first. Is not the technology, it is not the data which is accurate. It's important, but it's first the people. And I started with that, and I want to end with that, okay? So that's the future. You will hear more about the product from Noam later on. You will hear some testimonials here from customers as well. But I wanted to give you a glimpse of a feel who we are at the end of the day. Okay? So thank you very much for listening. I will turn that over. Next step, you can clap your hands, that's fine, you know. Nah, just kidding. Yeah, okay. So I want to turn over to Ethan Chernovsky. He's our SVP for marketing, and maybe you represent your guest.
Thank you, Kobe. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Dan Ellis, the Chief Operations and Development Officer at AMC and EVP at AMC, to join me.
Great. Thank you.
So Dan, as is our wont, we're gonna dive right in.
Yeah, great.
And we're gonna start with the kind of necessary, not most positive of backgrounds. So a few years ago, there was a lot of interesting conversations around the theater space, and they weren't all positive. There's streaming services, there's closures because of COVID, and you are sitting at the center of this industry. What was your thought process at the time? How do you kind of cope with that difficult scenario?
Well, again, thanks for having me. This is a wonderful conference. It's an honor to be here and speak with all of you. So there was a high level of concern, obviously. Our business, I think, is maybe more than any other type industry was so hit by COVID. And the level of concern was high. I was never concerned about really the theatrical experience as a whole. I do think moviegoing is kind of a fabric of culture in the U.S. and around the world. But those early days of COVID were difficult. And just as a little story about kind of how my concern evolved over time, at the time back in 2020, AMC was mostly owned by a Chinese company called Wanda. And every year Wanda had their big conference somewhere in China, and they would always announce it with great fanfare, where's the conference going to be? And it was scheduled for the second week in January. And somewhere towards the end of 2019, they came out and said, we've got the conference lined up, it's 1,000 people coming in, and the conference this year will be in Wuhan, China. So we all geared up second week of January to go to Wuhan, China. Never heard of Wuhan, China before. But they called about a week before and said, slight change of plans, nothing to worry about, but we're going to move it 1,000 miles away. So they did, and it really wasn't a big deal. Nobody really knew what was going on at the time, but this story is really kind of illustrative of the speed at which COVID hit our industry. And so fast forward, we had our fourth quarter earnings call on February 27th. Of 2020, and really no analyst questions about COVID. Really remarkable. I think there was one question. We had closed, I think, 6 theaters in Milan, Italy. They asked about what's going on with that. Our CEO totally blew the analyst off and said, it's immaterial to us. We're 1,000 theaters across the world. 6 theaters in Milan is not a big deal to us. I actually at the time was overseeing our international businesses and had a trip scheduled to Germany and London, left on March the 4th of 2020. And sometime between March the 4th and when I came back March 11th, the world had changed. And it changed dramatically for us. And so I got home on March the 11th. On March the 17th, we closed 1,000 theaters across the world. AMC went from a $5.5 billion revenue business to zero in the span of about, a day, effectively. And so, again, at that time, my level of concern wasn't about moviegoing in the future. It was really about our employees having to essentially lay off everybody. How in the world were we going to reopen our business, and how long were we going to be closed? And then what was going to happen to content over time? That I worried a lot about. But I never worried about the theatrical experience and whether moviegoing would come back eventually, which I knew it would.
I mean, it's an amazing thing to be saying now, and you almost, it feels obvious because of what's happened. But this last year must feel like a real vindication of that thought process. I mean, how do you look back at a year where there has been so much success in this space? And even more, I mean, what surprised you about what you've seen in a year where it seems like theaters have been abuzz?
Yeah. So this year has been really great for our industry. The big metric that we in the industry look at is what we call North American box office, which is the sum of the box office receipts for the United States and Canada. And in 2019, and really for the 5 or 6 years before that, that number was about $11.5 billion. Very steady business. We weren't growing like Placer speed, but the theater business was like a good, steady business for a long time. So 11 point, call it $4 or $5 billion was our industry. 2020, we did $2 billion, and that was almost all in the first quarter. Ramping up to $4.5 billion in 21, $7.5 billion in 22, and this year we think the industry will land around $9 billion. So that trajectory back up towards $11.5 billion, which is really where we need the industry to be healthy, is really along the way. And then what happened this summer on July 21st when Barbie and Oppenheimer came out, today I'll never forget, was really remarkable. Barbie ultimately did, I think, $1.4 billion in global box office. Did about $600 million in the U.S. and the rest internationally, which put it, I think, at the 11th highest grossing movie of all time. And we didn't see it coming at all. I think I went back and looked at our original projection for Barbie, and it was like $120 million. So it was 5 times that eventually.
I mean, this is the question that for me is so interesting because I don't know, when Barbie and Oppenheimer is discussed, it's almost like this foregone conclusion of, oh, obviously it's a movie about a scientist and a movie about a kid's toy. Obviously it's going to break records. I mean, how much of a surprise was it? How do you cope with the positive kind of wave of interest and take advantage of it?
Well, I think what was so interesting to me about Barbie is, again, it was not on our radar. It was going to be a good movie in terms of success for us, but not the juggernaut that it turned out to be. Barbie, I think, was kind of the culmination of a lot of stuff that went right for that particular movie. You remember the year before, kind of the surprise hit was Top Gun. And we all knew Top Gun was going to be a big hit, but it wildly exceeded our expectations as well. Barbie, I think, was originally conceived in 2009, which is a good story about how long the creative process takes. Sometimes they couldn't get a studio to do it. They went through a number of Barbies. I think Anne Hathaway was going to be Barbie at one time. Amy Schumer was going to be Barbie at one time. But it all kind of came together. Greta Gerwig, who was a director who was actually profiled on 60 Minutes this weekend, was really an interesting interview, kind of got the project, instantly wrote the part for Ken with Ryan Gosling in mind, and Margot Robbie. And so that, it was a combination, I think, the star power, the intellectual property and the toy that everybody, in the United States at least, and probably around the world grew up with and knew about. And it was just a lot of good things came together at the right time. And it really showed, I think, the power of movies. And what always frustrates me sometimes is, the conventional wisdom is only the big tentpole movies are going to do well. Big franchises like Marvel and the comic movies and sequels, that's the only movie that's going to do well. Well, this was not that. Top Gun was really not that. I guess it was a sequel, but the sequel was like 20 years before. So, and Oppenheimer certainly wasn't that. So I think what it continues to show me is that people will come out for good content. And when the studios can produce good content for us, we do really well. And I don't think that's changed. I don't think streaming has changed that. And I think that will be the case going forward.
I mean, let's dive into that because I think, streaming is always presented as this fundamental threat to the movie-going experience, but you talk about content, what works within the theater experience. When you view kind of the relationship between the theaters and streaming and the type of content that works in both settings, what are you looking for something that really works? And even more, I mean, how does your strategy change over time to try to optimize towards the ideal content?
I think I segment now streamers, and this has been an evolution, into kind of 3 buckets. One is a company all by itself, which is Netflix, which is really an unbelievable company. What a success Netflix has been. I think they now have 250 million subscribers, which is far and above everybody else. One thing, in my opinion, that Netflix really doesn't have, though, is great movies. They have a lot of great content, but I can't remember the last time I found a good movie on Netflix. And so we've been, I wouldn't say at war with Netflix, but we've tried to figure out a way that we could show their movies. And that's just not their business model. They want, their thinking is that they want their customers to be able to access their content on their terms. And so what has been important to movie theater operators for a long time is the theatrical exclusivity window, which before COVID was about 75 days. So we would have a 75-day period where content was not available in other areas. But and that's now come down to about 45 days. But Netflix would never observe that. So movie theater companies basically banded together and say, okay, that's fine. Best of luck to you, Netflix, but we're not going to show your movies. That's our stick. And so far we haven't been able to really come to terms with Netflix. I'm hoping one day we will. But that's one category of streamers. The other category, which is still kind of fleshing out and still trying to figure out how this is going to evolve, but is the studios now with streaming service. So think Paramount, very famous movie studio, they have Paramount Plus. Warner Brothers has HBO Max, Disney Plus. And so they're in a delicate balance now. So that they've historically done very well with major motion pictures. They spend a lot of money on production and then marketing, but they've invested all this money into their streaming business. And so they're in both worlds. They're trying to maximize their revenues in both worlds, and they're still trying to figure out what the art and science of that. Because I think one thing that COVID showed the movie theater industry is that the studios at that time did not have a place to show their content, right? They'd invested in many cases hundreds of millions of dollars in making movies, and all of a sudden didn't have a place to monetize that content. So they immediately started releasing stuff on their streaming services, which we hated to see, but we understood because there was no other place to show it. But the great learning and lesson from COVID for the streamers was that the streaming services really didn't monetize that content as well as they'd hoped. They hoped that it would drive tons of subscribers to their businesses, and it did a little, but they found that the best way to monetize their content, particularly on the bigger budget movies, is to have an exclusive theatrical run. And so that was actually a good, as bad as COVID was for movie theaters, that outcome was great for AMC and the industry. So I mentioned Netflix, I mentioned the studios with streaming services, and then the third bucket really now is two companies, is Apple and Amazon. So obviously not historical movie studios. They started with other businesses, but now they've gotten pretty deep in production, Amazon Prime and Apple TV. And earlier this year, people were really worried in our industry what those two companies were going to do. We didn't want them to go the way of Netflix. We were worried about that. But they both announced earlier this year that they were going to commit to $1 billion a year in exclusive theatrical production movies, which we're now starting to see the fruits of. A movie a few weeks ago, Killers of the Flower Moon, a Martin Scorsese movie, was an Apple movie. This past couple of weekends ago, Napoleon has come out, which is an Apple movie. So we're starting to see the benefits of that, and I think that's really going to be good for movie theaters.
I mean, do you view, when you think about the theater experience, I mean, you talked about the type of content that works in both settings. Do you think that there's an expansion necessary within what we view in the theater setting? I mean, we've always, almost jokingly talked about anything that you want to watch with a group, it'd be fun there. So if you are a football fan and your team has an away game that week, wouldn't it be great to watch the game with 100 other people and have this experience together? Do you view a necessity to expand what we've come to expect from content in movie theaters?
Absolutely, and I think we're starting to see that now. So really, the metric that we look at that tells us we need more content is what we call the number of wide releases produced every year. So back in 2019, there was 140 or so wide releases, and there's a couple definitions of wide release. One is it's shown on a movie on 2,000 screens in the United States, or that ultimately does more than $5 million. They both kind of turn out to be the same metric, but so think about 2019, there's about 140 of those movies. During COVID, that dipped way down, obviously below 100. This year, I think it's going to be 112 or so, but still down from 140. It'll be more next year. We've got the writers and actors strike that maybe we'll talk about. We're still dealing with a little bit, but the truth is there is less content today for movie theaters, and we need to fill in that gap. And so we were very pleased when Taylor Swift's team came to us just really a few months ago now. That deal came together very
Sorry, who
quickly.
was that?
A young singer, I'm not sure. But she came to us, and she was interested in doing her concert film. It had not yet been shot. It was more a conceptual plan in her mind, and really in dealing with her camp. It really is amazing. We could have a whole nother session on Taylor Swift, but her business, that $1 billion business she has now, is a family business. It's run by she and her mom and her dad, basically. And they came to us and they said, we would like to film our concert, and we would like to show it in your theaters, and we'd like AMC to exclusively distribute it around the world. So we put all that together with her team, filmed her concert at SoFi Stadium, and within like 30 days after that, it was on the big screen. And so I think that did, ultimately it'll be $180 million in the United States and probably $250 million globally.
So you need concerts with $8,000 tickets, and then people just want to watch them in the movie theaters instead.
That would help. That would help. This past weekend we did the same thing with Beyonce, and so put her movie out. I think in 100 countries that went out last week. And in terms of your question was other content, though. I think the answer is what else can we do? Sports is like nirvana for us. Like seeing the Super Bowl in the movie theaters would be great. And that's been difficult. We've continued to be in dialogue with the NFL and other sports leagues about that. The rights are tricky. There's a lot of people that have their hand in that economics, including the broadcasters and the networks and the leagues. But I think we'll get there eventually. And so having sports, concerts, live concerts as well, that we now have the capabilities to kind of beam in an actual live concert, not a recorded concert. So I think the appetite is there, and I think we need to develop the content to make us really continuing strong going forward.
And we're going to ask two more questions, and if anyone has any questions, we'll open it up to the audience, give you that kind of heads up to start formulating. When you think, we talked a lot about the content. When you think about the experience in the movie theaters, and I think we all have an expectation of what it was and maybe how it's changing and maybe how we would want it to change, or potentially things we would want it to expand to include. When you think about the experience in a movie theater down the road, where do you think we're heading?
Yeah, I think it starts with just delivering the best experience, a premium experience that we can today. Really gone are the times where kind of the old, dark, dingy theaters with uncomfortable seats. The industry has moved on from that, recognizing that customers demand more now. And I'm sure with everybody in the audience and in your businesses, you see that customers just simply demand more. So we, and along with the industry, have developed what we call premium large format screens, which are screens like IMAX and Dolby, which we're able to upcharge on, enhanced food and beverage. We now are offering a subscription plan, which is done well for us, where depending on where you live in the country, if you're in Middle America, it's $19.95. If you're in New York City, it's $24.95. You can basically see all the movies you want every month. And that has been a good program for us, and most of the big players have a subscription plan for us now. Moving forward, I see movie theaters trying to figure out ways to not only have the movie theater experience, but some other type of entertainment experience to keep folks there longer. The obvious, simple example is arcades, like a combination with Dave & Buster's, like business, but there are other concepts as well that we're exploring to keep people there longer.
That's really interesting. When as our last question, then again, we'll turn it over to a few questions from the audience. When you think about the wider brick and mortar sector, what can they learn from the volatility you've experienced and the way that you've handled it and the success that you've found?
I don't know. I mean, the one thing I do know is I stepped into my role as COO from really a real estate and development and legal background about 20 or almost 2 years ago now. The one thing I was not prepared for really was the volatility in our industry. So as an example of that, I think this August our company domestically played to 25 million people in August, and then 2 months later our attendance was 9 million people. And so thinking about how we deal with staffing and labor and scheduling and promotions and pricing and ticketing, that upswing up and down for us is challenging. And so that's one thing I've had to wrestle with. The thing I think we do a good job, and I know a lot of our competitors do as well, and I know all of you, is really what's amazing to me in our business, the marketing, how it's evolved. I'm not a marketer by background, but what I see in our ability to target our customers, if you've gone to a horror movie for the last 5 years in October, we know who you are, and you should expect seeing an email from us asking you to come see a horror movie in October, a couple weeks before the movie comes out. And there's just so much data we have on our customers, and it's so important in retail now to really know your customer and market to them smartly and cost effectively in the right way.
It's a great summation. And so I'll step out and kind of hand it over, but if anyone has any questions, if you could raise your hand, we'll bring over a microphone to you. Excellent. You can give us just your name and then the question.
Sure. Marty Sweeney, thanks for attending and thanks for a good presentation. Before the pandemic, AMC had a pretty robust renovation program underway, mainly focusing on taking out the old seat, bringing in the premium seat, making that a numbered seat you buy online, et cetera. Right after the pandemic, that slowed down. Of course, capital was tight, not quite sure where attendance was heading. Where is that program going forward?
So we're about 50% through a renovation program. So about half of our theaters have been renovated nicely within the last 10 years. So we got about half to go. You're right, capital was tight during the pandemic and remains tight as we come out of it. We're watching very closely what level of content we'll have next year. The writers, and it's kind of the 1-2 punch for the theaters. COVID, and then we were on such a great trajectory that I described, and then the writers and actors strike is going to make next year difficult. But we need to continue that progress because, as I mentioned, the old, dirty, tired theater is something of the past, and it's not a viable business going forward.
Do you want to stand up?
The other thing I've added, the industry has shrunk a bit. The industry is down about 10% in theater count from COVID, which actually I look at as very healthy. I think the industry needed it. We'll continue to close underperforming locations, not a ton more, but we still have some work to do there as well. And at the same time, we're in the position where we can acquire smaller operators and add to the portfolio that way, mitigate some of our closures.
Hi there. My name is Seth Sokolow, and I'm curious about how you see movie theaters evolving beyond the flat screen business. We see a lot of buzz right now about the Sphere in Las Vegas, and my understanding is that in between the live shows by U2, they're actually showing static content that takes advantage of the 360 experience. We also saw exhibits like Immersive Van Gogh be really successful. So how do you think about that for the future?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I haven't been in the Sphere yet. I've seen it from the outside. It's certainly cool looking. I think I've read financially it might be a little shaky. I know they spent a lot of money on that. We'll see how it does on the long run. I do think some of these experiential entertainment things like the Van Gogh exhibit I think are interesting to us. We've spoken with lots of folks in that space. The Mio Wolf people that have done kind of some immersive art experiences, I think, is interesting as well. So we're also looking at partnering with some of our studio partners to do some of their experiences in our theater that can then rotate in and out as various content comes and goes. So I think it's something that is definitely high on our radar.
And with that, everyone, a big thank you to Den. And very excited to pass the mic over to my colleague, Carrie Pierce, who's going to lead our next session.
Keyed up the mics for everybody in the right seat. So hopefully we've gotten all situated. Thank you. I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk about the future of retail with these amazing panelists. My name's Carrie, and I handle new product launches at Placer. And so I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. Matt, do you want to start?
Everybody can hear me good? So good. Matt Abreu, Vice President of Real Estate Operations, Analytics, and Finance. For those of you who may not know, we have 20 plus banners across the United States. So we're not just Albertsons, Safeway, Acme, Vons, Pavilions, Randall's, Tom Thumb. Just lots of great opportunities to serve our local communities every day.
I'm Carlin Matson. I'm Chief Customer Officer at Route 21. I've been really a career retailer for many years. And so in my role today, really coalescing merchandising, marketing, planning, and analytics together to really enable that customer experience. So really happy to be here. Super fan of the product that we're here to talk about.
So thank you for having me. Rick Rembert. I head up development for GNC. I'm the Vice President of Real Estate Construction Facilities. Happy to be here.
Great. So I wanted to start off, we heard Dan from AMC talking about the pandemic, and I figured we can start in the same place with our questions and our panelists. What do you think, in thinking through this pandemic era, what do you think the biggest impact has been on retailers and on brick and mortar specifically? And why is that? Did you choose that as the most impactful?
Well, there's multiple, issues that we face in that. One, really understanding traffic patterns. We saw a big shift, in 21 when stimulus checks really changed the trajectory of understanding what your volume could or should look like. And then, 22 came and things shifted and changed again. But then I think also as people have changed their locations, traffic patterns have changed from that perspective. If they're working differently, that's also changed their traffic patterns. So there's that layer of just understanding kind of who they are, where they are, how they're showing up. They've become more demanding in all the right ways, expecting more from us as a retailer. And so, the entire experience, I would say, has kept us on our toes and made us need to dig deeper, innovate, and understand a lot more about the customer in service to them.
I think for us, what we saw was brick and mortar wasn't going anywhere. It was wonderful to be able to serve the local communities that we operate in and provide that critical service. But really coming out of it, I was looking at some of the stats around e-commerce growth pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and post-pandemic. And I do believe that what I'm seeing is we need to be really focused on good brick and mortar development going forward, making sure we're serving our local communities in the best way possible. But we also have to think of it from an omni-channel perspective. How do we blend in all this digital growth that we've seen over the last couple of years? I mean, it's how do I engage with the customer inside the store before I get to the store so that they have the best experience possible and still trust us to provide them with their daily food and health and wellness needs every single day.
I think Eric Sherman said it best that you can take retail out of the store, but you can't take store out of retail. So the store is, brick and mortar is certainly here to stay. The customer has become more demanding and wants to engage with the brand, on their terms. So you need to have an omni program. You need to be able to open, ship from store, be able to do curbside. All of those are table stakes today, but being nimble and good real estate and having the store in the right location is really paramount.
Yeah, okay. And certainly the last few years has been very volatile, and real estate is sort of a long-term game, right? Long-term planning. How has that volatility really impacted your decision-making, and how are you sort of kind of increasing your confidence in decision-making in such a volatile environment? Like, where are you turning to?
I mean, for us, exactly why we're here today, we need data. I mean, data has become so important in the decision-making process. I mean, when I joined, I actually started with Rick at GNC 25 years ago. So when we were, just starting our careers, data wasn't as prevalent and easy access to get to as it is today. I mean, we have data everywhere. Everybody carries a cell phone now. We need to harness that data because that data tells us where to make those critical investments going forward. Because, as Dan was saying from AMC, even though in good times, capital's finite, you have to make a database decision first and then use that knowledge that our real estate teams like at Albertsons bring to the table, that local 30-plus year knowledge of where do we best serve communities, to take that data, blend it all together to make those critical decisions of where do you make tens of millions of dollars investment decisions for the next grocery store, the next strip mall or something like that. So I think for me, data, placer data is so foundational to where we want to go next as a retailer. And it's so amazing to see just like the partnership that Kobe talked about with Esri, because we can not only take the placer data, but we can marry our first party customer data, see where my customers are today, know who they are, and see where they're not and go where they're not and fill those voids in the marketplace.
So retail is hard, right? So, and probably only getting harder. Changes in traffic pattern, changes in customer. Those are real. I would echo Matt's point of view on data is sort of critical. And getting your hands on the right data and figure out what's actionable to you as the retailer is really the challenge. But with a methodical site selection process. Kind of going through that, I guess if I took it back to the 90s, this is a little glib, but I could throw a dart at a map and put a store there, and 9 out of 10 times it would work.
Yeah.
That's not how retail works, in 2023 and as we move forward.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, while not on the real estate side of things, we have to come in from a merchandising angle and really kind of holistically look at that data and make sure that our product assortment fits, it fits with the customer that we're really trying to serve. So. For us, it's really trying to marry all of that together and make sure that we can use the data, and it keeps coming back to that term, right? But really ensuring that we can profile that store appropriately so that we have the best opportunity to get the right return on investment for that real estate.
Right. Yeah. And so you mentioned too that I think you mentioned that or was it Rich that said the store hasn't really gone away. How do you think though that's evolved in the recent times?
So I think for us, the store is an extension of the brand. It serves as, a marketing vehicle. It grounds us in the community, puts us in the forefront of the customer. That's important. Again, layering in incremental services of office and ship from store. And a store today isn't just a place to exchange of goods and do commerce. It's a mini distribution center. It allows us to provide a good shopping experience for the customer. It's far less transactional and far more relationship based, and especially in the health and specialty area, that's paramount. That consultative sort of relationship between the associate or the coach, as we call them, and the customer, that can't really be replicated online or in a DTC model or even in a wholesale club. That really has to happen, in a store with our people.
Yeah, I would echo, I think Rick really gave a great answer to that. I think, in some cases also bricks and mortar has to be a little bit of entertainment as well, and finding different ways to engage with the customer, but also really delivering on expectations. And so you have to show up well. You have to, really have the right customer service experience. To what Rick was indicating, being in a GNC format and having that deep customer knowledge. And how you really win that customer. They have to really be able to see themselves in your storefront, and when they walk in the door, just have that consistency of experience all the way through.
Yeah, one of the things that our CEO talks about a lot is being locally great, and really what that means for us is we're a hub of the community. I mean, we feed the community. We now provide millions of immunizations to the community. We provide a lot of critical medicines to keep people healthy and safe throughout the day. And so with that hub, I think, people depend and rely on us. And I also, what I see when I go to my stores, when I visit stores, you actually see a lot of social interaction with the customers. So a lot of times our employees are engaging deeply with our customers because they've come to expect that. Because during the pandemic especially, we were all locked up in our house, but we could go to the grocery store and you could see someone and you could nod and through your mask and wave and say hi. And I think that's resonated. And I think for even like Dan with theaters, I think people still want to go to theaters for social experiences. So I think it just bodes well for brick and mortar. We have these great places to gather and be social and provide a lot of great opportunities to engage with people and, be humans. We don't all sit behind a screen and, every day. It kind of gets a little monotonous, and it's a great opportunity for us to really serve the community and be that social hub.
Yeah. So how many folks here in 2023 have started behaving a little bit more like they have in 2019? Has it been? Right. So you can see, yeah, some people, but it's still mixed, right? So do you think this change that we've seen in consumer behavior since 2019 is sort of a permanent change? Or do you think we're sort of all reverting back to form and regressing to the mean, so to speak?
I think the role of experiences, I'll go back to that for a moment. And Dan said something that really resonated with me. One of our biggest traffic moments was Barbie. And so it's kind of that marrying of, something broader going on, the Taylor Swift concerts, like there is this how you're bringing experience into a bricks and mortar format, but in a way that you're not there in that moment, but the customer is being part of a much bigger experience that can transcend several different mediums. And in our case, we found that it really transcended into our storefront. So that to me is a little bit new. I've been, in lots of different versions of retail, but to see a kind of this broader experience coming home into the storefront was a little bit newer for us this year.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's probably true with just the whole idea of the experience and the customers looking for the experience, and especially in the pandemic that was so missed, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so there have been some segments too, such as health and beauty, off-price apparel, grocery certainly, that have been doing better. Is there any lessons to sort of be taken from those segments in this time period?
Well, I think to some extent, if you think about off-price as an example, that is a frequency driver because they're constantly changing their assortment. And from a health and beauty perspective, that's a replenishment business. So they have traffic patterns that have some level of understanding. So adjacencies, partnerships, who you're collaborating with or getting a proximity, strategy with, I think really matters because I think some of them have been around for a long time. Beauty's always been a replenishment business.
Right.
And they tend to withstand strange things, in the world, in the economy and whatnot. So I think it's understanding some of those truths that transcend, but also understanding what really drives their business and their traffic patterns, because there's something really to be learned on what you're trying to draft off of to some, or partner with to another perspective.
Yeah, I think for us, it was just being very hyper local at the right time. When right before the pandemic, we made a big bet to move into e-commerce and have what we call drive up and go, which is you order online and pick up at the store. And it was great timing. We had no idea a pandemic was coming, but I think for us, what really proved to be fruitful is all of our locations are warehouses. I mean, we have 40,000 SKUs, let's say, and we have a whole back room filled with all of the product that people need to pick up at the store. And really, our distribution side wasn't disrupted at all. We could still get product into the store, but we were able to serve people that needed to be served because we had made strategic bets to make sure we were in the right locations that got very close to the customers that we felt like would shop our banners across the United States.
And I think, inventory and supply chain is huge. You'd have to have products in the right place, at the right time. Strategic pricing is critical. You need to be price sharp, have, promotions that resonate with the consumer. I think it ultimately, like in our business and specialty, getting data and technology in the hands of the associate in order to make that, experience in the store a real positive and in a way that you can help the customer kind of with their health and wellness journey is just kind of critical and table stakes from us.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Carlin, you mentioned omni-channel approaches, kind of looking to the future. How are you embracing that more? And, how does that affect your strategy?
I mean, there's so many layers to that, really trying to ensure that every way we look at the business becomes much more seamless to the customer, but also trying to determine what's our why in all of this and how do we add maybe a different level of value than someone else, so that we, really get into the heart and soul of our customer and understand what does that omni-channel experience mean to them. Yeah. So we're really kind of stepping back and thinking about, in our case, the teen market. There's a lot of different ways we need to think and play, and it's constantly changing and evolving. A little bit different from the way I might have approached it at GNC. So it's fascinating, and it's the kind of thing that keeps you up at night, but it gets the wheels spinning on what more do I need to really know to be able to connect effectively.
I think for us, it was interesting when you all raised your hand. It was about, 50-50 maybe, people that had kind of returned back to their old ways. So I think an omni-channel for a grocer like Albertsons is just making sure we can deliver what you expect how you expect it, whether it's being an in-store experience or delivering to your home, or being able to have that kind of in-store experience and know that when you pick the product that you want to pick up at the store, you get the product that you want when you pick it up at the store. So for us, omni-channel is really just however the customer wants to be best served, we will serve you, and that should be our mandate as a company going forward.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, it's about meeting the customer where and how they want to shop the brand, and whether that's, you know, in our physical retail footprint, great. We can control the entirety of that experience, and that's great. But also online through an app, in a wholesale club, DTC, we want to be there as the customer demands it. So.
Yeah. Okay. And sort of also continuing forward, what do you think? You know, as we look to 2024 and beyond. What do you think that the sort of the most important innovation to focus on is? Like, where are you going to be putting your efforts in terms of innovation?
We're going to double down on data. I mean, as I was flying out here, we were talking about our data strategy, and you know, Placer's obviously part of that data strategy. For us, being hyper local is super important. We need the data at a very granular level. Like when I started in market research 25 years ago, it was, you know, census data at a block group and, you know, a lot of statistical projections. But now we have mobility data that in pretty much zero lag time, you know, a week or couple days. I can see the movement of my customer. I can see their customer journey. I can see where they sleep at night, where they work during the day. And that really helps inform me, where do I make those strategic bets with my capital to grow my business? Whether it be build a new store, remodel a store, put an initiative into my store. So we're going to be really focused on data going forward for 2024.
We're certainly happy to hear that.
Yeah, no, great.
I could not agree more. You know, I think oftentimes that people think about the store of the future and what the, you know, kind of physical location would look like. But at the end of the day, you know, it's really that manifestation of how you can get data and extract it out of that. Either, you know, omni view or, you know, in my case, I'm thinking about it much more from the store level. How do I extract data from our selling associates? How am I thinking about what we're seeing on choices that they made or didn't make? You know, we've looked at different fixture types that, you know, really allow us to see whether they passed by something and they didn't convert. So I think, you know, the unlock for us is knowing the customer and hyper-localizing in the exact same way that Matt described, because then the customer really will have a reason to choose you, and you're really providing the right level of experience and service to that customer as well.
Yeah, speaks to that.
Yeah, I think, you know, from a real estate perspective, you know, it's all about de-risking kind of the decision making that when we do that. But obviously, you know, you open a store, or you enter a market, you're committing a lot of capital, a lot of investment there. You know, I have a team of deal makers over at the Javits Center tomorrow that will hate me for saying this, but my most important people on the team is the market planning and the analytics group, because they keep us out of trouble for making bad decisions. And so really it's about, you know, getting your hands on the data, making it actionable, and then, you know, applying that decision-making matrix time and time again.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so kind of change topics a little bit. If you were to give one piece of advice to the retailers and real estate people in the room for the next year, what would that be? Besides using Placer, of course.
Yeah, I like what Rick said. I mean, we talked about it at dinner last night. I think for me, you have to start with a data-based decision first, and then use your gut, your intuition, your experience to help shape that into the ultimate decision you make as an organization. So for me, if you're not investing in technology, leveraging big data, trying to marry all of these various data elements together to come up with that cohesive matrix to make your decision making more sound and fact, you're probably doing yourself a bit of a disservice. So for me, it's investing in talent, technology, and data is so critical, I think, going forward for any retailer that wants to grow in the country today, because your competitors are doing it, and that's what's gonna separate you from your competitors. If you can actually get the talent, the technology, and the data integrated faster, you'll have a competitive advantage at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree again, exactly with that. And I think there still is a part that is the art, that there's so much better science today, but there's still this value of the art. And what are you doing to, again, kind of connect and stimulate with that experiential side of retail as well, and not losing sight of making space for that, thinking about that in the planning process and how the format is pivoting and adjusting a bit to allow for that side of the equation as well.
Are you freeing up more resources to concentrate on the art now that the data has provided some more of that science?
I wouldn't say we've freed up more resources. I think that actually is where many retailers have leaned in the past. So it's kind of going with what they're used to and they understand. It's educating a lot of retailers on the data is the bigger jump for them. So making sure that you're weighting that equally, because it's a very balanced business of art and science, but the science is going to unlock a lot more than it ever has in the past, I think.
Yeah. Anything to add?
Yeah, I think the science keeps you out of trouble, right? Like, so the data, when you listen to it and follow it is super helpful, and generally you can find your path forward with that. From a real estate perspective, managing the portfolio and having market plans and understanding what your true white space is critical. And making sure you don't wind up overstored and cannibalizing your business, and really with Placer and that is super helpful for those activities.
As I said, we love to hear it. So before opening it up to audience questions, just one more fun one. What do you think the store is going to look like in 2030? Are we going to be walking around with VR glasses, with AI assistants? Where do you think it's going? Where do you think brick and mortar is going in 10 years? Any idea?
Boy, if I got this right.
Yeah, I know. Well, we'll check in 10 years. We'll be back here in 10 years, and we'll see whether you were right or not.
I think the world has changed. The pandemic has definitely changed the way we think about the world. But, I look at the history of grocery, and I still believe that in 2030, our stores are going to be positioned locally. I think where we might see changes is the size of the store. What's that in-store experience? How is digital going to play into that in-store experience? I mean, I hope we're not walking around with VR headsets, but that might just be a generational thing, which is kind of, I feel like my dad at this point.
Right.
But I have children that are millennials and Gen Zers, and they love going to the grocery store. They love the experience. So I think that as long as you can satisfy what they're expecting when they get there. Like, they still want to do online ordering, but they also like the physical experience as well, like an experimental, having new products in the store and having the depth and the ability to do those resets and merchandising initiatives that really drive the experience inside the store. I think if you have stores in the right locations that allow you to have that flexibility, I think that's what we're going to see in 2030. I think that's where retailers are trying to get to, is have a very flexible store that provides the best experience, whether it's physical or digital, inside the store.
I think that, again, is a really good kind of holistic answer to it. And I think the other part that's always been true in retail is when you ask the customer what they need or want, they're going to guide you as well.
Yeah,
and so marrying all of those ways that we can make the format and localize a better experience for the customer, but what else can we do to simplify their lives, and understanding their need states at the simplest levels that we can. It's just listening.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we understand that too as a software company. It's listening to customers, right?
Yeah, I agree on the size of the store potentially. I think inventory gets sharper, right? So having a localized assortment is critical. Ultimately, having a quality loyalty program is really paramount. So that way, and then getting that data in the hands, again, in a specialty environment, in the hands of an associate, so that way that consultative selling experience can really take shape. I think those are kind of the keys that we would see moving forward.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's sort of a continuation of some of the trends that you've seen in the last few years emerging. Yeah. So, okay. We'll see if we're right.
Yeah,
10 years. So I'll open it up to the audience. Is there any questions? Or raise your hand? Thank you.
Hi, Eric Yang here. This is for Albertsons in the grocery space. Grocery tends to have a reputation as a low margin business, and as you know, data is not exactly cheap. How do you see that enabling Albertsons to be more competitive, either maintaining lower margins or growing those margins or what have you?
Well, that's true. Kobe, we need to talk about the prices of places.
No, the price is very fair.
Thank you. Well, one of the great things about being a retailer is if you have a strong loyalty program, which we do, we have the ability to see what are our customers buying, where are they originating from, and that helps better inform us. And then we can make investments like Placer that, while pricey, so again, Kobe, we need to talk about the price, that enriches our first-party data, so that investment should have a great return on investment for us. Because if it takes if I only have a certain amount of capital at the end of the day to grow my store base and renovate my stores, if I bring my ROI up by a few basis points, that could pay for Placer in a heartbeat. So for us, while data is expensive, as long as I know I have the right data that's achieving my strategic objectives from a data strategy perspective, and it's getting that ROI, it actually just keeps paying for itself at the end of the day. So on the margin side, honestly, I think it's up to our merchants to figure out what are those additive products at the end of the day. But again, we're going to leverage not only our first-party data, but third-party data to help us understand what are those things that they want from an attitudinal perspective to help drive up that margin.
Other questions? Anyone else? That was Kobe.
I hear you, Kobe.
Yeah. We have somebody to talk to afterward about it. Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, Becca.
What were your most interesting insights that had to do with the? Thank you. I'm Dana. I'm with Placer. Interesting insights that have to do with like the types of products that people were purchasing from a certain location or a certain segment in the last year for each one of you.
Ooh. That's a very difficult question to answer.
If you can't answer that, that's okay. But Placer can.
So over the last couple of years, we've been focusing on attitudinal segmentation. So that's really the shopping behavior of our customer. And so it's weird to say this now as an old, stodgy real estate guy. When I was growing up in the business, it was about income and population growth. And really, if you put a store kind of anywhere, I remember the first year I was at GNC, we did 300 stores that year. You just put a store and it worked. Whereas today, I think people are more picky about what products we offer. So you really have to understand through the data what is actually resonating with the customer. And it could be completely different wherever you go. We were talking about Hispanic grocery up in the little mezzanine up there, and we had a Hispanic grocer that we invested in. And when I sat down with them and said, "Why are you guys successful?" They said, "Because we actually provide authentic Mexican-sourced items that the customer trusts because it's the same items they saw in their markets when they lived in Mexico." But they said, "Matt, as soon as a Caribbean Latino comes into our store, it doesn't resonate with them." So you really have to know who is your local customer that you're trying to serve, at least from a grocery perspective. And so it's, again, I go back to the data. You have to understand their spending patterns and what's resonating with them and lean in heavily on that, because that's where you're going to win with the customer. And that's where you're going to innovate. You're going to see what's winning, and you're going to keep innovating in that space until, hopefully you get all the customers in the market.
So we just did an exercise. Can you hear me okay? I think I'm in and out a little bit. After Black Friday, to look at some stores that we had segmented kind of urban and suburban. And we dressed our mannequins with what the best sellers were in each of those markets. And I don't, quite frankly, think that our urban nomenclature is quite right. And we have not yet overlaid it with Placer data. So I cannot wait to get to that moment. But it was fascinating because, typically during Black Friday, you sell big items, you sell a lot of items, doorbusters. But what we saw in the urban stores that we had classified, very different selling. So it just helped us double down on, even in those moments where you feel like you're selling more of a commoditized product, there was definitely market differences and, really validated that we have to just get so much better at what we're providing to those customers.
Yeah, I agree. So, shift my mic. So ultimately, during the pandemic, we saw a huge increase, obviously, in immunity and products along those lines. Have pivoted a bit, towards wellness sense, and then back to sports and performance. So those trends, kind of continue. Ultimately, we too have segmented stores. Some gyms, some aging population, and ultimately we too are like leaning into that and really trying to make sure that the product that we have in said stores are targeted to the right consumer that's shopping us.
Cool. Thank you. Other questions? Oh, ring in the back. Sorry, we'll work the mic over.
Hi, my name's Kevin Crowder. And when you talk about brick and mortar and you talk about the experiences, you talk about the supermarket having that advantage of being a gathering space. And those gathering spaces are what connect people to a place. And you had that advantage. Are the things you saw in the data, or even with your gut, that as things open up and as more hands get raised back to the 2019 behavior changes that were positive for you, that you've been able to focus on and sort of make permanent as we come out of the pandemic?
Yes. I will say it's a tough question to answer, because while we came out of the pandemic and people were doing well and people were getting back to normal, now we have all these economic headwinds coming. We have federal aid ending. We have student loans coming back into place. The housing market, prices are up, mortgages are up. And so I think that while they're gathering places, people still need to make their paychecks spread and cover the necessities. Healthcare's rising. Food costs are rising. Energy costs are rising. And so while they're gathering hubs, I think people are spending a lot of time actually looking at prices now and really understanding where do they get the most value for their hard-earned dollar at the end of the day. So I think they still trust us, and they still are looking at us as value, and they look at us as a hub for the social experience. But I think it's a very difficult question to answer, because when we come out of the pandemic, we go into the next headwind, which is now this economy, which I don't know where it's going to head and how the customer's going to react to it. So I don't know if I answered your question. It's something that I'm wrestling with, which is, yeah, we had a great pandemic and we came out of the pandemic well, but now we have an economy that is kind of pushing down on top line.
And that's been a problem. It's been a while since we faced that problem in the country, right? Outside of the intensity of the pandemic, it's been since the 2008, right, where we faced a similar kind of unsurety in that respect.
Yeah, and I think, from our standpoint, you just have to have good leaders that can understand and kind of read the tea leaves, so to speak, and just keep financial discipline. And really, again, I go back to leveraging your data, especially your first-party data, to help you make better decisions about how you can combat those headwinds that you're going to all face at the end of the day, because they are there and they are real.
For sure. Anything else to add? No? Is there any other questions? We're putting in our exercise today.
Hi, Caitlin Hilgers. As you work to localize your assortment at the store level, what are some of the barriers you're running into, and what are you doing to tear down some of those barriers?
We keep setting you first,
Yeah.
right?
Oh.
So,
All right.
I can. We're in the midst of this, and I was doing the same work at GNC, so I understand the same barriers. I mean, in part, it's just resourcing, quite frankly. There's great data out there, and we're going to figure that out, but it's really trying to to take the data, appropriately aggregate it, test, learn, iterate, try. You have to have somebody internally too who can really take and run with the work itself. And then when you think about it from a merchandising perspective too, it really changes the entire way you're going to market and you're buying your product, because you typically would buy product that might go to all stores and then, you know, more volume based, if you will. And now you have to really think about it a whole different way, which changes how much you're buying, different suppliers you might need to be working with. So it becomes a lot more complicated on one level, but the return at the end of the day, you know, I fully believe is the absolute right way to go, which is where taking the data and really harnessing this and enabling it for us is going to be one of our biggest wins. But it's not simple by any stretch of the imagination. I've been in this conversation, you know, for probably 20 years in terms of people trying to go down this path and trying to figure it out. And I wouldn't say anybody's doing it great, although groceries probably crack the code more than any fashion retailer.
I would say for us, it's the biggest barrier is speed from ideation to full rollout. So you have to compress that window, and it's definitely a resource issue. Finding the right project management team to take it from the ideation phase to full rollout. You have to have great execution at the end of the day, and you have to trust the journey along the way. And again, I sound like a broken record, but again, utilizing data helps speed up that ideation to rollout phase. You can especially get through testing it and piloting it before you make that large investment decision. But again, it's time. So if you can shorten that time, that's a big roadblock you can get out of the way, and you can have a competitive advantage.
I think the other thing that I would just add is it's holistic in that it's not just the product assortment, it's, you know, your staff, the marketing, you know, really how are you representing the customer in that market. So you can't just do one piece of the equation, otherwise it falls really flat and the customer understands that really quickly.
Yeah, I think testing and learning is super important with it, because you won't get it right the first go round. I think, and then ultimately, if you have a strong omnipresence and have the ability to kind of endless aisle and be able to sell and have, you know, the ability to fulfillment next day and the customers, you can kind of buttress against, you know, some of the downside if you do kind of get it wrong, and you know, just sort of helpful along those lines.
Okay, another question from over, two more from this side. Come back around. Making the walk all the way over there again. Sorry.
Thank you for everything so far. My name is Orr, rates this. Seeing this as a Placer conference, I'd like to maybe a little more lighthearted question around what's your favorite Placer fact that you've figured out since you started using the tool, or something that's been most surprising that you've learned by using Placer?
I would say for us, we started a journey maybe about a year ago with Placer. We brought an idea to the table of how do I know which competitors of mine are generating how much traffic out of a very small geography, so a census block group. So for us, it was really insightful to see those facts come to life because, again, we have great operators running our stores, but again, they don't have all the data. Now we have unlocked this really critical insight at a very hyper-local level. So when we have discussions, we can now say, it's actually that grocer winning that area that maybe we thought, and now we can actually target specifically on how do we claw back those dollars that are going to my competitors. So just it's just the foot traffic data at the end of the day. Seeing where the foot traffic is going out of that block group has been so unlocking for us from a grocery standpoint.
And I would say from my perspective, we're looking at Placer on 4 levels, you know, real estate usage, traffic data, localization and segmentation, and ultimately marketing. But the, you know, probably most fundamental answer as we're kind of transforming our whole business model is looking at this traffic data, because you have a real way to assess yourself against the competitive set, and are you above, below? And we care about that probably more than anything in our company right now, and are the things and actions that we're doing resonating to pull people into our store versus somewhere else? And if the mall itself is off, then we know that it's not just decisions that we're making, but there's something more broad going on. I mean, it sounds so fundamental, but it really helps you level set, when you're trying to try new things, what's working and what's not working against the macro environment.
So I think I would say, real estate matters. Co-tenancy matters in the center of the demand. The quality of that co-tenant in the center within their retail portfolio matters. And placers give us visibility into that, which we wouldn't have had 12 months ago before we started using them. That's probably been the most exciting piece.
I think there's another hand or two over here. Yeah.
I should just stay in this corner.
My question actually piggybacks off of the last question, I guess, because of the answers you said. Elizabeth Hagan from Atlanta. Are you working with, through your data, with your landlords ever to overcome maybe some psychological barriers, whether that be traffic flow, parking? Do you find that you're working, bringing your data to your landlord or asking your landlord to use their data to work together to overcome psychological barriers or physical barriers that you might be seeing affecting your foot traffic?
So I think from us, I guess along those lines, vacancies, right? So we are using that data, where we potentially would have, some ability to action, foregoing paying rent or rent reductions associated with a level of kind of occupancy in a center. So we utilize Placer for that exercise, but not beyond that, like we were talking about traffic impediments.
We're not using it with our landlords, but we are a landlord, and so I think the CRE guys will be like, they'll just laugh at me when I say this, but trying to find those right tenants to fill some of the vacancies within the shopping centers that I actually lease and own. So that's something that we never really thought of using Placer for, but our leasing team is now like, wow, this is a really great insight that we can get from this foot traffic data to see where are they not in the market, but who would actually benefit the most by the type of mix of co-tenants and the foot traffic it drives to the shopping center. So when we go meet with a variety of retailers, we can say, you're a fantastic fit for this particular shopping center. So it's just kind of the reverse.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, we have a tool for that. It's called void analysis, and
Yes,
it does
absolutely.
exactly that. So for any
Had no
retailers out there
idea.
that are also landlords, absolutely, it's a great advertisement for it because that's exactly what it does. So it's good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions? If not, I want to say thank you to our panel. They were outstanding, and I really appreciate the questions and diligence. Thank you, guys. Thank you. And I think I'm turning things over to Noam.
All right, so lots of great stuff for today. And I wanted to start with this thought. Our stated mission, and kind of the formal way we describe the company, is we want to be the physical market research company for anyone with a stake in the physical world to help them make better decisions. The one thought came to mind during these sessions, listening to all these great folks, and we actually spent another 25 hours prior with our customer advisory board that includes these people along with some other people in the crowd, kind of geeking out about data and geeking about everything. And what dawned on me is that we're actually, our real mission and the reason we wake up and the reason everybody's having fun is we're on a joint mission to be on the bleeding cutting edge of using data in business, right? And the reason is kind of apparent to anybody. We look around, we started, as Kobe said, 6 years ago we started the company, we launched 4.5 years ago. It seems like a very short time, but it also seems very long because we went through COVID and we went through the interest and the recession in the market. And there's this overarching theme of e-commerce. And then we have return to office. So many things are changing. And overall, nobody's going to say it's tailwinds. It's definitely headwinds, right, for all of us. We have to change. We have to adapt. But overall, we're doing okay, right? And the reason is that we can adapt and we can be flexible, and it's all about the data, all right? So what I want to do today in that spirit of being in the bleeding cutting edge We'll share some things that were recently released, and we'll share some things that are coming down the pipe. First of all, let's start with this slide. Kobe did flash this slide earlier, but I want to take a different tack on this one. So these are some of our customers. We're actually very proud of a lot of logos that are not here. These are the more well-known logos. Most of our 3,000 customers are actually lesser-known, mid-tier companies that are using the data also to navigate change and make decisions. And what I think we didn't realize when we launched the company is the diversity that's going to come in here. There's actually a lot of sub-verticals that are not represented here, whereas tech companies that are using the data, hotels, medical, transportation, energy, they do exist. Some of them are using the data in very, very innovative ways. And I think one thing that I thought about early is, why is there not, for every one of these companies, a different product, a different vertical? And the reason is that all these verticals are one ecosystem. Everybody's talking to each other. The data is actually a language, right? It's a language that people show each other data to make cases, to drive change, to make decisions. 50% of the time, our customers are using the data internally to make an internal decision. But the other 50% of the time, they're actually showing it to each other. And so we're going to dive a little bit into what it means to kind of build this out. These are the type of decisions that are being made today in the platform. It's a small sample. Every vertical, within the vertical, there's breakdowns. If we think about retail, it could be marketing, site selection, strategy. If we think about civic, it could be economic development, chamber of commerce, the county, the state, national parks. All these people are using it in different ways, whether it's to expand to new markets, direct marketing, supply chain, analyzing events. The list goes on and on. So what allows all this, right? Yeah, as I said, we're on a journey together. Everything we have, we learn from you. We're not retail people. We're certainly not experts in 15 different verticals. And so we'd love to hear from you which data and or solutions you'd love to see in Placer. If you want to become a design partner, you can talk to your CSM, and hopefully you'll join us for more events, and we'll continue to do this kind of thing, and we can get better. And one last point is at the end, we'll enjoy cocktail hour, but at the end, there's 4 tables, and you can take any of these 4 things. We have our mobile app. We have some marketplace apps that we launched. We have some predictive analytics, like the sales forecasting, and some capabilities where it's like stuff on maps. It's really beautiful. So if you want to walk over there during the cocktail hour, we have some people there that will give you more in-depth demos. That's it on my end. Thank you.